Good morning, everybody. I was going to run on stage like they all did downstairs, but I didn't want to sprain an ankle or anything. How are we all doing today? Great. All right. Happy Monday, right? My name's Anthony Marrone. I'm an attorney, like many of you, in private practice. So I'm a practicing attorney, taking a couple days away from the office to learn, meet some of you, and hopefully have a great time here in Chicago. I'm also the author of a book that's coming out in 2 weeks. You probably have the bookmark on your seat. It's called Social Media Marketing Blueprint for Lawyers. But today, I want to talk to you about how do you run your law firm like a small business. So I was thinking about this topic, thinking about, okay, how do we change the conversation so that instead of running our law firm like a practice, as it's traditionally been run, we run it more like a very successful small business. And the first thing that came to my mind was a Shark Tank. For those of you who don't know, and I'm kind of picking this up, I'm from New York, so I'm very familiar with Shark Tank and a lot of the sharks on the tank. It's a ABC sitcom. In Canada, for our Canadian friends, there's a show called Dragon's Den. Are you guys familiar with this? Anybody from Canada here? We got some Canadians? All right. So the premise is basically this, for those of you who don't know. Does everybody know what Shark Tank is, or are there some that haven't seen it? Okay, so Shark Tank. An entrepreneur goes in front of 5 multimillionaire investors to pitch an idea, whether it's usually a product, it can be a service. And the idea is that the entrepreneur is attempting to get funding for their business. So we know, I'm a practicing attorney, so the first thing I think of is ethics. Okay, well, we can't do this, right? We can't take money from non-lawyers as an investment into our law firm. But what if I thought and changed how I'm practicing so that if I ever could go on Shark Tank, my business, my practice, would be something that the sharks would want to invest in? What do I need to do in the day-to-day humdrum of practicing law to change the way that we're doing things so that it's a business that's marketable, scalable, and ultimately, hopefully, sellable? So we're going to enter the tank. We're going to bring a hypothetical law firm into the Shark Tank. We're going to face the questions that the sharks ask, and they're going to give us some feedback, and we're going to see whether our law practice is truly worthy of investment from the sharks. So what's the first question that the sharks always ask when someone enters the tank? By far, the number one question is, what are your sales? What have you sold so far of this product? How many units, how much money have you made? So I think that this is an essential question that lawyers rarely address head on. I was so happy that Jack this morning talked about KPIs, key performance indicators for law firms, because I felt like he must have reviewed my slides and said, I'm going to prime everybody for Anthony's speech and get them going thinking about data and thinking about indicators for practice. We ask questions all the time, like, what's your realization rate? How many hours have you billed? Does everybody, you get that metric when you log into Clio. For those of you who use Clio, I use Clio, of course, showing you, how many hours you've billed so far in the year, what's your expected billable hours, what's your, is that close to your target? And these questions are useful, right? How much have you originated so far this year? These questions are useful, but I really feel like if you want to grow your practice and you want to grow as a business and make more money and expand your reach, they don't really hit the nail directly on the head. No other business categorizes key performance indicators that way. I'm thrilled that Clio is starting to release this data, aggregate the data, and they're going to share it with us. But I really feel like we need to ask a different set of questions as the head or part of a law firm if you want it to run more like a successful, scalable small business. How do we operate our business in a lean way and in a way that's profitable? My number one recommendation to you is that you need a number, okay? You need a number that you want your sales or your gross revenue to be for a given year. So for a while, I was fixated, when I started my law firm, I was fixated on, well, we're going to have $2 million in revenue. That's the goal. And then you go through a couple months, you see the money come in, you start growing, and you say, okay, well, that's a good, that might be a good 2 or 3 year goal for a 1 or 2 lawyer practice or more. But at the time when I was just a one-man show with my assistant and paralegal, I couldn't see the path to $2 million. So I said, okay, We'll go down to $1 million, but let's break that down because just having $1 million up on our board and on a whiteboard in the office is not going to get us where we need to go. My team needs to be living and breathing this number. So what did we do? I took a look at a calendar. When I was at a big law firm before I went out on my own, one of the associate attorneys had mathematically concluded that there were 219 billable days in the year. That once you factored in taking all your vacation days, sick time, holidays, travel, all that stuff, that you would have 219 working days. So for me, this became the Bible because I wasn't going to double check and it seemed accurate, right? So the reason he did that was because we had an 1,800-hour billable requirement, and he figured that on the 219 working days of the year, he had to be billing 7.6 hours per day every single day of those 219 days. And this is how dedicated he was. He would never leave the office before he hit 7.6. But the minute he hit 7.6, he was done. That was it. Like, Mike, you're in the middle of drafting this motion. How's it? Oh, I'm done. I'm going home. 7.6 religiously. I'm like, you realize you could, get a little cushion if you work. No, 7.6. Okay. You need to break it. You need to what they call reduce it to the ridiculous. You need to take your big number, your sales goal. Hopefully it's based on some reality, right? You've done some budgeting. I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to micromanage the details for you, but you take your big number, you divide it by 219 working days. So if your number's $1 million, for whatever reason, your whole team should be working towards a daily work goal of $4,567, right? $1 million divided by 219. That's your number. And so every person in your office lives and breathes that number. And that's how you're going to hit the goal. If I just have $1 million goal and my assistant is, logging payments in Clio and she sees, we had a good month, we brought in, $92,000, that doesn't mean anything to her. But the $4,567 goal, if we bring a client in, and I do trust in estates, if I bring a client in and we're going to do a nursing home Medicaid application for that client, and they're paying us $12,500 or whatever we're charging, well, we've hit our goal for the day. Or we have a bad day. Anthony spends, what do they say, I only bill 23% of my actual time. Is that what the number was this morning? So I only bill, my hourly rate at $225, I only bill $450. Well, we're only 10% of the way there. So that's not a great day. So you have to have, I think, if you want to hit sales goals, if you want to hit revenue goals, you have to have this number, and you have to have reduced it down to the ridiculous. Reduce it to a daily number that your entire team knows, right? Because I'm big on transparency. If your secretary, if your receptionist doesn't know what you're trying to reach, they're not going to be able to help you get there. So if everyone's on the same page, we're all marching to the beat of the same drum, everyone can see these metrics in Clio, especially if you're in a smaller firm, it'll be easier to hit that target. You'll want to focus on other KPIs besides just sales or revenue. One I like, and again, I'm not an accountant. There's going to be there's going to be more accountant speak later, and I don't want to put you guys to sleep with CPA talk on a Monday morning, but revenue per employee is a great KPI. So you take total revenue and divide it by the number of employees you've got, and you figure out what's your revenue per employee. Another one that's really strong, I think, is net income as a percentage of revenue. So you take your gross revenue. Again, you'll need an accountant for this. Hopefully, by the end of these 2 days, you'll have learned that you need to outsource your accounting and bookkeeping. I hope that if you haven't done that already, again, the metric this morning about how lawyers only spend 23% of their time actually billing clients. As a small attorney, when I started out, I did my own bookkeeping. Quickly realized that I didn't have the capability to do it or the time to do it. So you want an accountant to give you these figures, gross revenue divided by net income. In addition, with Clio's metrics and Clio's dashboard, I'm a big fan of the dashboard. When you log in the morning, you can see it right in front of you. Using those key performance indicators, you're going to be on your way to hitting your goal. Okay, so let's respond to the sharks. Again, we're this hypothetical law firm, and we're going to try to get an investment from the sharks. We're not going to give a lawyer-like answer on our sales, right? We're not going to avoid the question or say, well, that depends. I billed 1,800 hours, but my realization rate's only 68% sharks. So technically, on paper, we made 600. No, we're going to give a straightforward answer to the sharks. So far this year, Because we track this in Clio and we know what our revenue to date is, we have a revenue through 3 quarters of $640,000, okay? So we're a little bit short of our $1 million goal, but we've got some sales, so there is some value there. What do the sharks think about our cash flow?
The only thing that speaks the truth to a franchisee is cash flow.
No, listen.
You gotta have cash flow. The next question that many sharks ask is, how does this business scale? It's probably something most attorneys never think about, right? I'm in a practice. I'm an attorney in Syracuse, New York. I have a satellite office on the St. Lawrence River. I'm not necessarily thinking, I mean, I am, but most attorneys aren't necessarily thinking about, how do I bring this to New York City? How do I bring this to Albany? How do I bring it to Buffalo? How do I bring it all the way across New York State? Or a friend of mine who works in Nevada, apparently the most profitable state to work in if you're an attorney by the hour, has a First Amendment federal type practice. So his practice is nationwide. So how do I scale that up? How do I grow, right? Because scale is really about growth. How am I going to grow this business? As lawyers, most of us are constantly trading time for money. If I bill 9 hours today, I'll make $1,800, right? If I do that for 219 days a year, that's $395,000. So really, if I'm gonna make $1 million, I just need to copy myself twice and a half, and then I'll be there. Yeah, all right. Doesn't really work like that. Scale does not work like that. Jack is not responding to your Clio technical questions by email, right? Has anybody ever gotten Jack, I'm really having a problem with my billing workflow this month. Can you help me? And he responds and answers a technical question. No, he's working on the business, right? He's working on growing the business. He's doing the keynote. He's traveling. He's, meeting with the big law firms, trying to get Clio into those big law firms. You need to think of yourself in the same way. You're the, for those of you who are the owner or the shareholder, you are the CEO of this practice. What you need to figure out how to do as a business owner, and I'm going to give you a blueprint to do it, is to carve out systems and plans so that we can stop working in our business and start working on our business. In my office, we have this joke, and I say when new employees come in, I know how to do everything. I can get the mail, I can make a copy, I can make coffee for the clients if they want to. I'll go and bake them a pie. I am not above doing any of the dirty work, and that's kind of the culture that we've created. However, we know that our practice will not be truly successful until Anthony stops being the person who's doing those day-to-day tasks. That as the key employee, we need to replace him as the person who does some of those things that he still does. So for handling questions about what do you charge to do a will package? If we're passing that client along to Anthony, that prospective client along to Anthony to talk to that person, he's losing time that could be valuable in another part of the practice. So we have to figure out ways to replace him in doing those administrative tasks. He's not above doing it, but if we all want to be profitable and successful, he can't do it anymore. So what I usually say is, I only want to do the tasks that legally and ethically require a lawyer to do. So I'm not going to send my secretary. I do a lot of estate litigation. I'm not going to send my secretary to court, obviously, for me. I'm going to argue motions. I'm doing the hearings. But for things like bookkeeping, sending out the bills, doing the mail, a lot of the routine stuff that happens in as part of your practice that you may be doing as a small business owner, until you're able to replace yourself in that role, hopefully with an assistant or paralegal, you're not going to be able to scale and grow this business. It's the reality. Because otherwise, you're just trading time for money. You're just going to work longer hours. You're going to have less work-life balance, and you're going to be more miserable. That's why lawyers have, huge substance abuse rates, huge levels of dissatisfaction with their profession. Really, this speech needs to go to the people who weren't savvy enough to come to Chicago and give up 2 days worth of work, right? You guys have all acknowledged, by being here, we've all acknowledged that we need help and we want to leverage other partners and other technological opportunities to advance our practice. It's the people who aren't here that need to really hear this speech. But the question about scale really is, be honest with yourself about what you're doing, whether you're filling an employee's shoes or are you acting more like an owner, okay? Here's an example. You guys all know George Steinbrenner. You remember George Steinbrenner, famous owner of the New York Yankees, probably made more famous by the parody of him on the sitcom Seinfeld. Okay. George Steinbrenner owned the Yankees from 1973 until the time he died in 2010. So basically almost 4 decades. From 1973 until 1993, Steinbrenner was intimately involved in the day-to-day management of the New York Yankees. He fired managers, he fired general managers. It was a joke in New York during that time period that he would continuously fire and replace managers. In 1993, he gave up day-to-day managerial control, delegated things to a general manager, Brian Cashman, and other executives, and he worked on managing those folks and building the Yankees brand globally. From 1973 to 1993, Yankees won 2 titles over 20 years. Basically, from 1995 until the time he passed away, they won 5 more titles. And so much of that is credited to Steinbrenner stopping his work in the day-to-day ops, day-to-day management of the New York Yankees, and taking a more high-level ownership approach. And I want you guys to think about, how can I do the same thing? How can I be the George Steinbrenner of this law practice? The key, I think, is this. What you need to do is figure out what tasks you complete. Okay, so as you're going through a day, try to be conscious of, okay, what am I doing? And then document how you're doing those tasks, okay? I draft a trust for a client. I have now written down every single step of that process, committed it to writing. And so the key is, when you commit that to writing, and you take a step back and look at it, you start to figure out which steps of that process can be completed by other members of your staff. And that's how you're really ultimately going to scale and grow this business. By removing yourself as an employee, treating yourself as an owner, you'll be able to meet increased demand for your services, which will naturally be there because you're going to have more time to spend out in the community, spreading the word about your business, marketing, networking, doing the things you need to do to grow. And you're not going to get run down as much as most lawyers do because you're not handling those mundane tasks that really are not going to be profitable for your practice in the long term. So you need to figure out, how do you replace yourself as a key employee? I think of that every single day I go into my office. How do I make myself less necessary as a part of the day-to-day operations here? I'm still the macro level CEO, but I want to manage the people and manage the responsibilities and be the face of the firm. I don't want to be the guy, every time I type a petition for probate, I'm thinking to myself, what do I got to do to stop doing this, right? Every time I'm drafting a will, I'm like, why am I doing find and replace? Or why am I, now we use document automation software. Why do I have to be the idiot who's plugging things into this software? What can we do to stop that, move me out of that role? It's not that I don't want to work. I want to work on my business, not in my business. That's how I'm going to scale. So let's answer the Sharks' question. They asked, how does our law practice scale? And I'm going to say, Sharks, look, we're ready to take our law firm business to the next level statewide. As the business owner, I'm not working in the business anymore, I'm working on the business. So you've already got a CEO. I don't need the Sharks' money to help and bring in a CEO. I'm going to be the CEO. I only do the things I'm legally required to do, and frankly, I've hired an associate attorney to do a lot of those, and I'm training her to do that. I'm working on expanding the practice full-time, networking, marketing, doing things that are going to increase our brand and increase our image. And what do the Sharks think about our growth?
But in business, you have to crawl, and then you walk, and then you run.
That's right. So we started off, Anthony was working full-time with one other person, doing everything in the business. He recognized the need to systemize the practice and remove himself as the key employee. And now we're ready to run because Anthony's only doing the things that he's legally required to do, ethically required to do, meeting with clients, interfacing in the community, and now we can really grow. So another question we commonly get is, why do you need our money, right? The Sharks always want to know, what are you going to do with their money? So I once worked for an attorney. I don't know how I had all these, attorneys are just great. So I worked for this attorney. She was an estate planning attorney, and she wanted to hit $250,000 a year, and the minute she hit that, she would stop working. She would stop taking new clients. This is how old-fashioned it was. They would take messages on the handwritten, like the carbon copy message, and they would literally sit outside her office and pile up. And the irony was that the more she rejected new work, the more demand there was for that work. She's no longer practicing law, big surprise. But what I really wanted you to think about is, how do you create that type of pent-up demand for your services? Because, the question that Jack asked, where he said, we're really going to break everybody into two two separate sectors, growing your business and becoming more efficient. This is a growing your business strategy. We've already established that a practice that relies on you to do everything, it's not a business, that's a job, right? If you're doing everything in your law firm, you're just working. You're there punching a time clock, hopefully collecting a paycheck as the employee. But a well-run legal business experiencing growth must exist as a separate entity from you as the owner. That's the key. That's the key. You think Mark Zuckerberg is coding for Facebook anymore? He was at one point. Maybe he still does to keep his synapses firing, but he's not sitting in the room with the Facebook engineers. He's out evangelizing for that business, and that's where you need to get to if you really want to grow your practice. So why do we need the shark's money? What are we going to do with it? I think if we were to be able to get an investment like this, again, ethically not permissible, but let's pretend that that goes away. What we're going to do is use the money to expand geographically, right? I'm going to hire more staff, more paralegals, more administrative level people. They're going to allow me to expand both geographically and expand the scope of what we're doing. Hopefully we'll also add, what's the number? 6 or 7 is where we start to get huge utilization rate out of attorneys. So we're going to grow up to that. But you can't be upset if the sharks aren't going to fund you.
Don't cry for money. It never cries for you.
It'll never cry for you. The next question we get all the time on Shark Tank is how much does it cost to make and how much does it cost to sell? This is something lawyers, at least part of it, lawyers are never thinking about, and I know this because I used to never think about it. It's really a two-part question. What does it cost to make and what's your price? I'm going to start with price. And I was putting this on the Clio app this morning when Jack was going through the hourly rates. I hope that I'll see the day when the billable hour is just totally killed off. I'm sure we're almost there. I do almost no hourly work in my firm anymore. It's all flat fee or value based. I don't have time to go in depth about how to set it up, but if you guys have questions or you want to know how I do it, I'll stick around. I'm going to be here today and tomorrow anyways. Just ask me how I do it. I think it works in almost every practice area. Somebody said litigation might be tough. I do it in my estate litigation practice. As long as you comply with the ethics in your state, I think it's great. And it's great for a couple reasons. It works for the clients because they no longer fear like a lawyer's dragging the case out just to crank out billable hours and money, right? I'm quoting them, Janice, I'm going to charge you $3,500 to do this trust. It might take me more or less than that in terms of time, but I'm never going to charge you more than that. That's the flat fee. Clients like that. It's predictable. Even the big, you got big institutional clients, they're liking that more and more. My practice is more retail. I have individuals are my clientele for the most part. They love it. They might not hire me right now. They got to get the money together, but they're going to hire me, down the road in 2 months once they take the money out of wherever they're taking it to pay me because it's predictable. Flat fee works for lawyers as well because when done correctly, you're no longer trading time for money. And you'll have a huge profit over the standard billable hour if it's done correctly. If you're using Clio to monitor and track, I still track my time hourly. I'm still, inputting my time into Clio or my assistant's inputting my time into Clio. However, I'm doing that more to figure out what is the true cost of this service that I'm providing. Have I priced my product correctly in the marketplace? How much does this, and that's really the first part, right? How much does it cost to make? Since we're service providers, we probably don't have a great sense of the cost of our services because we're in the habit of trading time for money, right? I send you a bill for 6 hours, you send me $1,200. That's how we've always done it. What I want to eliminate from that is eliminate the trading the time for money. I want to keep track of my time so that I know, based on how much time I put in, if we're charging the right amount within, my geographic community for depending on what other lawyers charge. But what I really want to figure out is what are the most profitable areas of my practice? Here's an example. I offer 2 of the main things I do are irrevocable Medicaid trusts for people trying to protect assets, and then Medicaid applications for people going into nursing homes. That's, I have an aging practice. My client's average age is 77. I charge $3,500 to do the trust. I charge $12,500 to do the Medicaid application. So on paper, you'd say, yeah, give me those Medicaid applications all day, right? That's almost 4 times the revenue. But what we figured out when we started tracking it through Clio and everybody inputted their time is that we're basically 20% higher on profit margin for the trust than we are for the Medicaid application because even though the Medicaid application is more dollars, it's also 4 times more work. So in reality, give me 4 Medicaid trusts in my practice for 1 Medicaid application, I'll be happier all day long because I've done the work to figure out that I have more margin, I make more margin on the trust than I do. That's the kind of technology you need to be harnessing to figure out how much margin am I making? Am I doing the right activities? If I was just looking at the money, I would say I'd be pushing and pushing and pushing in my marketing to get more Medicaid applications, but that's not as profitable an endeavor for me. The trust is much more profitable. And if you group things through Clio correctly, where you've got all your practice areas lined up, you can look at these metrics over time. We're running a little short of time, speaking of, so let's see how the sharks respond here.
When you walked in here, I thought to myself, cha-ching,
Thank you,
a-ling-a-ding-dong.
Cha-ching, right? You're charging $12,000 to do that? What? Cha-ching. But last but not least, what's your competition? I don't know about you. I dream at night, and I never used to be this way. I dream at night about the advertising and the marketing that my competitors are putting into the marketplace. I have 2 little kids, and I love some of my competitors. We're friends, we're colleagues. But to the extent that they're marketing in the same demographic that I'm marketing in, I see it as they're taking food off my kids' table. Okay? I wake up at night and I'm like, John put out that ad, it's killing me. He's putting on this seminar for people and he did a thing on TV. I got to get, I'm always thinking about my competitors. Not always in a negative way. And the funny thing is when I worked at a law firm, a big law firm, they didn't want us associates to think about competition with other law firms at all, right? It was actually, you were not supposed to think about it at all. But I really want you to think about your competition. What do they do that's similar to you? What do they do that's different? And here's where, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. I've been putting it up on the Messenger app. He's coming to, Gary Vaynerchuk, if you don't know, he's coming tomorrow to do the keynote. And this is, I know he's gonna talk about this. You have to differentiate yourself from the marketplace. And I think the way to do that is on service, customer service, right? I do wills and trusts. I'm not gonna be able to convince Betty Smith that my will is a superior product. The document, the 4 corners of it are better than yours, right? Because they're probably not, right? To a certain extent, they're all gonna be the same. My advocacy in court may be stronger than another attorney's or not, but that's not what's gonna win for me in the end of the day. It's gonna be service. I wanna create, what did Jack say, unparalleled experience? I send pies to all my clients at Thanksgiving time. It's just something I do. I love pie, I'm a bigger guy. I'd love to get a pie, so I'm hoping, send and you shall receive. So that's just, you have to, within your personality, you've got to come up with some stuff that's going to separate you. I want everybody to have a wow factor when they come away from working with us. I deal with a very, can be very tough subject matter. Death, dying, loved ones getting sick, going to the nursing home. I have friends who do divorce law, same kind of thing. You got tough subject matter. So you've got to figure out a way to differentiate yourself and kind of bring some of the lightheartedness back into it. And that's kind of some of the stuff we do. We send anniversary cards when it's their anniversary. We send birthday cards. You have to figure out a way on service and customer relationships. How are you going to differentiate yourself from the next guy? Just a quick plug, running out of time. You have, a lot of you have, I actually ran out of bookmarks because there's so many people. So I'm going to, you have a bookmark. I talk about a lot of these tips and tricks in the book that's coming out in 2 weeks. If you send me a tweet or send me an email, even if you don't have the bookmark, I'm going to send you guys a free copy of the book, not a digital copy. I'm going to snail mail you a copy of the book for coming to my speech today. I really appreciate it. It goes in depth into marketing and social media a lot, but it's really done from the perspective of a practicing attorney, and a lot of the things that I've talked about here today are mentioned in the book. But last but not least, I want to get back to the shark's question. What's our competition? Did they like our answer?
Guess what time it is, Robert?
What time is it, Lori?
It's deal time.
Yes!
So someday that's the dream, right? I want to be on Shark Tank pitching my law firm to the sharks and hoping that they'll invest in my services And I hope that some of the tips and tricks that we've provided today will be useful for you guys. I'm going to stick around for questions. Time's running short, and I know that there's more great seminars that you'll want to get to. So thank you. You guys have been a great audience, and enjoy the conference.